You know that feeling, don't you? That subtle, kind of invisible pull, a little voice in the back of your head saying, oh, I owe them.
Yeah.
Someone gives you a hand, does you a favor, maybe gives you an unexpected gift, and boom, instantly there's this like invisible chain of obligation, right? Linking you to them. It's ancient, it's powerful. It's really a cornerstone of how we function as societies, how we cooperate, how we manage this whole complex social exchange thing.
It absolutely is. It's, deeply human. It lets us build communities, share things, help each other out. But, well, like any really powerful force in human behavior, it can get twisted. It can be used, maybe subtly exploited, and end up leading us down paths we really didn't want to go down. Especially, and it's key for today, especially when you're trying to build a healthier life, maybe break old habits.
Exactly. So, welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take these big, complex ideas, we sort of peel them back layer by layer, and we try to distill them into insights you can actually use. Today, we are diving headfirst into one of the most potent psychological forces out there, reciprocity. Specifically, we want to explore how this fundamental human thing, this deep feeling that you have to give back, how that can become a trap, a really insidious one, particularly if you're on a journey of personal recovery, trying to break free from old, maybe unhealthy patterns, and, reclaim your well-being.
Yeah, our mission today really is to give you the tools, the understanding to spot and navigate what we're calling the reciprocity trap. We'll look at how this natural drive, this need to seem fair or grateful, can be kind of exploited by others, maybe folks from your past who don't necessarily have your best interests at heart now. And crucially, we want to show you how you can still be a generous person, a kind person, stay connected, but without compromising your own well-being or, the progress you've worked so hard for in your recovery.
Right. And we've got a great stack of material to draw on today. Some really fascinating stuff. Seminal works on influence, like Robert Cialdini's influence, which is huge here, but also insights from habit formation, attachment theory, the nature of control, human motivation. So yeah, get ready for some, maybe some aha moments. Because understanding this force, it's not just interesting theory, it could be a game changer for protecting your peace, your progress.
Okay, so let's start at the beginning. Let's really unpack this core idea, the universal rule of reciprocity. Cialdini breaks this down really well. It's this basic human tendency, this feeling of obligation to give back what you've received from someone else. It's way more than just, being polite. It's deep. It's almost primal. It's what allowed cooperation, sharing resources, complex societies to even develop. It leads to mutual benefit. It's the glue holding a lot of things together.
And this is where it starts getting really interesting and maybe a little uncomfortable. Cialdini uses these simple examples, right? Stuff that happens all the time. Imagine someone listening, let's call her Sarah. She's working really hard on her recovery, building good habits. She walks into a new coffee shop. The barista, maybe just being friendly, offers her a little free sample, a piece of a muffin, maybe, unasked for. Sarah didn't necessarily even want it, but okay, she takes it. Now what happens? Cialdini's research says something profound happens. Sarah is now significantly more likely to give back something bigger. Maybe she buys a more expensive coffee than she planned, or agrees to do a survey, or just feels this pull to go back to that coffee shop. And it's not really about liking the muffin or the barista even. It's just that obligation switch got flipped. That's how the trap can start, right?
Yeah.
So subtly, you don't even notice the hook's been set.
It's seemingly harmless, but it's the foundation for a lot of persuasion techniques. And one of the big ones, one that can be really manipulative, is what Cialdini calls the rejection-then-retreat tactic. Sometimes people call it the door-in-the-face technique. Basically, someone starts by asking for something huge, something really unreasonable that they totally expect you to say no to. Then, right after you refuse, they immediately ask for something smaller, something that seems much more reasonable in comparison.
Ah, okay. And the mechanism, the trick behind it is sort of twofold, isn't it? First, when you say no to the big thing and then they retreat or concede to the smaller request, that smaller request suddenly feels like a concession they made. And because of that reciprocity rule, you feel this almost irresistible urge to reciprocate their concession by saying yes to the smaller thing.
Precisely. And it gets you with the perceptual contrast principle, too. Think about it. If someone asks you for, I don't know, $100, and you're like, no way, then they immediately say, okay, well, how about just 10? That $10 suddenly feels way smaller, much more reasonable, easier to agree to than if they just asked for $10 from the start.
Right. It's like a psychological judo move.
Yeah.
Uses your own tendencies against you. And understanding this double whammy, the reciprocity plus the contrast, is so critical, especially for understanding how manipulation can just sneak in almost invisibly, particularly when maybe your guard is down or you're feeling vulnerable, like in early recovery maybe?
Definitely. And beyond these direct sort of social engineering tactics, the roots go deeper. They touch on our evolution, our basic psychology. William James, the father of American psychology, he pointed out how deeply our mental life is tied up with how others see us. He said we're sensitive to looks of approval or disapproval on the faces among which my life is cast.
Right.
Our sense of self is constantly being shaped by these reflections.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense from an evolutionary perspective, doesn't it? Our need for connection, for approval, it's not just nice to have, it's survival. James suggested this dependence on others, this need to belong, would make us spontaneously altruistic, to keep the group strong, which helps us survive. But that deep need for acceptance, for belonging, that makes us vulnerable, right, to social pressure, to these kinds of reciprocal obligations. We want to be seen as a good member of the group, and that often means giving back.
And if we look at it through another lens, maybe a bit starker, B.F. Skinner, the behavioral psychologist, talked about intentional aversive control in society. His view was that people often behave in ways that reward those who treated them badly, basically as a way to escape or avoid that bad treatment. And this isn't just about, physical punishment. It's about subtle stuff, too. Social discomfort, disapproval, someone withdrawing affection.
Wow, okay. That's kind of unsettling. That we might comply not because we want to, but just to make the discomfort stop. Can you unpack what he meant by counter control then, especially for someone trying to break free? How do we push back if we feel that pressure?
That's a really important point. Skinner emphasized that all control is reciprocal. There's always this back and forth, this interchange between control and counter control. It's essential for how cultures evolve, he argued. So even when we feel like we're just complying, there's this underlying negotiation happening. Counter control is our ability to resist that pressure, to push back against the unpleasant stimulus, or to change the situation so the other person's tactics don't work anymore. For someone in recovery, it means actively saying no to manipulation, setting boundaries, maybe changing your environment. It's about asserting your own agency, your own control, even when you feel that social pull.
Okay, so Skinner's saying, basically, while people try to influence us, we also have the power to influence them back, or at least control our response to their attempts. That's more hopeful. But then adding another layer, Freud brings in this idea of inner conflict, doesn't he? The struggle between self-preservation and our basic drives, like libido, our higher psychical authorities, like our conscience maybe, try to keep these drives in check, but that can cause tension, reduce pleasure.
Exactly. And what's really relevant here for the reciprocity trap is Freud's mention of the irresistibility of perverse impulses, perhaps for the attraction of whatever is forbidden. That suggests there's this powerful internal pull towards things our conscious mind might see as unhealthy or wrong. And that complicates things when we're trying to resist external pressures, especially pressures that trigger deep feelings of guilt. Freud even theorized that guilt might have these really ancient roots, maybe collective inherited experiences. When they take that literally or as a metaphor, it points to this deep, maybe primal vulnerability to guilt.
So when someone, maybe unintentionally, maybe deliberately, triggers that deep guilt perhaps by reminding you of some past debt, real or imagined, it's not just a logical thing. It's like hitting an ancient emotional button that bypasses our rational thought, making us feel obligated in this really powerful, almost pre-programmed way.
That's a great way to put it. It bypasses rational processing. It creates that irresistible pull Freud talked about, making it incredibly hard to just say no, even when no is the healthiest answer for us.
Okay, so now let's really bring this home. Let's apply these deep principles to that specific, often really delicate situation. Personal recovery, imagine you listening, you're doing great, new habits, feeling stronger, more resolved, and then an old acquaintance pops up. Maybe they mention some past favor, subtly bringing up that feeling of obligation. This is where that reciprocity trap can become a huge, potentially dangerous roadblock on your path.
Yeah, and it's fascinating how these past favors, even small ones, get leveraged. Cialdini's work shows how even tiny initial commitments can be used to shape someone's self-image. Once you agree to something small, you become more likely to agree to a whole range of requests that are consistent with this view of himself. You want to be consistent with who you just showed yourself to be.
Oh man, that's directly, almost scarily applicable here, isn't it? Let's go back to Sarah. An old friend, someone from before her recovery, might appeal to her old self-image. You know, Sarah, you were always such a loyal friend, or you were always so generous. They might casually drop a reminder of some small, maybe long-forgotten favor they helped her move once, lent her $20 years ago. Now they're not just asking for a favor, they're tapping into that self-image, the one you've worked so hard to change. They're nudging you back towards old behaviors, old circles, by reminding you of who you used to be, or who they still see you as. It's insidious because it uses your own desire for consistency against your current goals. You feel pressured to live up to an identity that doesn't fit anymore.
Exactly. And this manipulation of self-image, this pressure to revert, it gets amplified massively by what Zimbardo called the power of the situation.
Yeah.
The Stanford Prison Experiment. It showed pretty dramatically that good people, people with good intentions, can do negative, compliant, even harmful things under strong situational pressure.
Mm-hmm.
He said a flick of the situational switch could change behavior drastically.
Right. The lesson there for anyone in recovery is huge. It's maybe even life-saving. If you go back into old environments, intentionally or not, or hang out with the same old crowd that was part of the unhealthy patterns, that situational switch can just flip right back. Suddenly, you're not just fighting one person's manipulation, you're fighting the whole environment, the whole familiar, triggering situation. But thankfully, Zimbardo also found that having social models of peers who rebelled, who showed resistance, could help people push back. Which strongly suggests that finding new, healthy influences, surrounding yourself with people who support the new you, is absolutely vital. It helps keep that new situational switch turned on.
We also see a real vulnerability emerge from attachment theory, particularly with the anxious attachment style, which Levine and Heller describe so well. This style often involves increasing clinginess when someone feels distance, doing almost anything to try to be close. Now, while they often discuss this in romance, that underlying craving intimacy and being super sensitive to even the smallest perceived threats makes someone really susceptible to being pulled back into old, unhealthy bonds by people who know how to trigger that need for closeness, even if the closeness itself is harmful.
Wow. So for someone like Sarah, an old friend might not even need to mention a specific favor. Just triggering that deep need for connection, even if it's with someone or in a dynamic that's bad for her recovery, could be enough to reel her back in. It's like this emotional vacuum that these unhealthy connections can just rush into. That adds a whole other layer of complexity, doesn't it? It's not just about owing something, it's about what you emotionally crave.
Mm-hmm. And digging deeper into the mechanics of manipulation, Skinner talked about counterfeit reinforcers and the role of deception. He described things like personal attention, approval, and affection as conditioned positive reinforcers. They usually feel good only if they're genuine, linked to real positive outcomes. But, Skinner warned, they can be used when a connection is lacking, meaning they can be totally fake.
Okay, that's a huge light bulb moment for me. Thinking about manipulation and recovery, think about it flattery, over-the-top praise, someone being excessively charming, those winning friends tactics. Often that's simulated approval. It's not genuine care. It's designed specifically to create a false sense of connection. It's a false sense of obligation.
Ugh.
That's exactly what an old friend might do to lure someone back, make you feel super appreciated and important, but not because they care about your recovery, just because they want that leverage back. It's a performance to get a response, but it's hollow.
And Dan O'Reilly, looking at dishonesty, adds another piece. He found people can rationalize our dishonesty when it is one step away from cash.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't just about money, though. It seeps into social stuff, too. We might rationalize giving in to an unhealthy request by downplaying the harm or maybe exaggerating how much we feel we owe that person.
Right, like his insurance example. People who'd never steal cash might pad their claim by 10%. They don't see it as theft, maybe just getting what's fair, or making up for something. And in the reciprocity trap, we might do the same thing with obligation. We stretch it, convince ourselves we really owe this person, even if paying that debt means compromising our recovery, breaking a boundary, putting our health at risk. These little rationalized tit-for-tat things can just escalate, right? Slowly eroding our boundaries, pulling us deeper without us even noticing the real cost.
And something else that's profoundly important, especially in recovery, is how we internally process what others are thinking, and how easily that can reactivate old stuff. Insights from William James and Steven Pinker remind us that, thoughts don't magically leap from one mind to another. When we perceive someone else's thought, we have to construct his thought within ourselves.
Meaning, our understanding of what someone wants or expects from us isn't direct. It's something we build inside our own heads. So we're constructing their intentions internally, which makes us super susceptible to what we think they intend, even if they're being manipulative or just plain wrong. Wow. We can literally talk ourselves into feeling obligated because we've built that expectation inside our own heads. Validating a debt that might not even be real, that's a powerful cognitive bias.
It really is.
Yeah.
And then you have Pavlov's work on conditioned reflexes. It shows just how incredibly sensitive we are to cues in our environment. Any minutest change, he found, can trigger an investigatory reflex, this automatic orienting response. But even more critical, and honestly quite alarming for recovery, is that disinhibition can instantly bring back a conditioned reflex that seemed totally gone, extinguished.
Okay, this is massive for understanding relapse, isn't it? Think about it. Old social cues, a specific place, a song, just seeing a certain person or hearing them say a particular phrase, these can be unbelievably powerful triggers. Even after you've been doing well for ages, made huge changes, these seemingly small things can instantly reactivate old patterns, old cravings, old feelings of obligation, pulling you right back. It's like that cowardly and submissive dog Pavlov wrote about. After being restrained for hours, it would just explode into astonishing fits of excitation when freed. It shows how suppressed states can just erupt and how much context shapes us. Old contexts, old cues. They can bring back old obligations, old ways of being, even when we thought we were miles past them.
And finally, we really need to consider Bessel van der Kolk's perspective, especially regarding trauma survivors, since many people in recovery have trauma histories. He explains that survivors often find themselves revolving around bracing against and neutralizing unwanted sensory experiences. End quote. They might do this through self-numbing drugs, alcohol, even things like compulsive exercise, or, conversely, through sensation-seeking risky behaviors, gambling, intense activities, trying desperately to feel something or maybe feel nothing. This search, often unconscious for a false and paradoxical feeling of control, can make them incredibly vulnerable. Vulnerable to returning to old coping mechanisms, or crucially to old relationships that offered some sense of security or control, even if that relationship was ultimately harmful.
So for someone in recovery, maybe with a trauma background, the reciprocity trap isn't just social pressure or feeling indebted. It can actually tap into this much deeper, almost physiological need to feel in control again, even if that control is fake and comes from an unhealthy source, like an old relationship or behavior pattern. That just underscores how complex escaping this trap really is. It's not just conscious choice. It involves deep psychological, emotional, even physiological stuff.
That's great.
It's multi-layered. Okay, wow, that was a lot. We've really dug into the roots and the real dangers of this reciprocity trap. But now let's shift. Let's talk about empowerment. We've seen how deep this goes, how it can snag you, especially in recovery. But, and this is important, you are absolutely not powerless here. It's about figuring out how to be generous, how to be kind, because those are good things. But without messing up your well-being, without sacrificing the progress you fought for. And the first, maybe the most crucial step, it has to be becoming really self-aware. Recognizing your triggers, understanding your own needs.
Absolutely, and a fantastic starting point for that is understanding your attachment style. Levine and Heller break this down beautifully. Knowing if you lean anxious, craving closeness, super sensitive to threats of distance, or avoidant preferring space, maybe uncomfortable with too much intimacy or more secure, that knowledge illuminates your tendencies, your predictable patterns in relationships. They talk about the anxious avoidant trap, for example, where these really different incongruent intimacy needs can just dominate everything, creating this constant, exhausting push-pull. Recognizing that built-in clash, understand that maybe you and this other person just have fundamentally different needs around closeness, that's key. It helps you step back from destructive dynamics, including ones with old friends who might, maybe unconsciously, exploit those vulnerabilities.
Okay, so it's not just about what they do, but how our own internal wiring, our attachment history, might make us naturally more susceptible to certain pulls or manipulations. That's a big realization, shifting from just blaming them to understanding ourselves. And the self-awareness, it also means challenging that all or nothing thinking, right? Like someone with avoidant tendencies might think, see, I knew they weren't right, I'm better off alone. While someone anxious might go into dramatic protest behavior to try and pull the person back. Spotting those automatic thoughts and reactions lets you pause, question them, and choose a more secure, constructive response instead of just reacting like you always have.
And James Clear, in Atomic Habits, really hammers home the importance of reflection and review. He sees it as crucial for improvement, for what he calls identity upgrading. He even suggests doing an annual review and integrity report, like consciously asking yourself, what kind of person am I becoming? Do my actions line up with my values? Regularly looking at your relationships, especially the ones that trigger that reciprocity feeling, and asking, how is this actually impacting my well-being? Is this helping me become the person I want to be? That's a vital ongoing defense, not just a one-off check, but a continuous process of self-evaluation and adjustment.
Okay, so once you've got that foundation of self-awareness, the next really powerful move is to actively redesign your environment and your habits. Make them work for your well-being, not against it. This is where Clear's stuff on identity-based habits feels revolutionary for recovery. He argues the most effective, the most sustainable way to change isn't just focusing on the outcome, I want to say no more often, but on who you wish to become. I am the kind of person who protects my recovery boundary. Every action you take, he says, is like a vote for the type of person you wish to become.
Yes. That's so foundational for recovery. It shifts the whole narrative inside your head. It's not, I'm struggling against this thing. It's, I am the kind of person who prioritizes my health, my boundary. It empowers you to continuously edit your beliefs and to upgrade and expand your identity in a way that truly serves you. It builds this deep internal motivation based on who you fundamentally are, making those choices like resisting the reciprocity trap feel much more authentic, powerful, and easier to stick with.
And Clear gives us the practical roadmap, too, with his 4 laws. Make good habits obvious, attractive, easy, satisfying. You can apply this directly to recovery. Using implementation intentions, I will do this healthy thing at this time in this place, that makes it concrete. Or habit stacking, after I do my current habit, like brush my teeth, I will do my new healthy habit, like meditate for 5 minutes. And designing your environment, making the cues for good habits really obvious. If you want to journal more, leave the journal and pen right out where you'll see it.
And then you slip it for the bad habits, the ones that lead you into the trap. Make them invisible, unattractive, difficult, unsatisfying. This means actively reducing your exposure. Remove the cues of your bad habits from your environment. This applies directly to those old friends, old places, old routines that trigger those unhealthy obligations. Don't just rely on willpower that runs out. Strategically control the environment that shapes your choices. So that old acquaintance who always hits you up late at night pulling you back. Instead of just trying to resist the text message, make the cue invisible. Maybe you set your phone to do not disturb during certain hours. Maybe you temporarily mute their notifications. You could even set an implementation intention. If that person texts me after 9 p.m., I will put my phone in another room and read for 10 minutes instead of replying. It's not rude. It's proactive self-protection. You're building a barrier against the trigger before the obligation feeling fully kicks in.
And that point from Clear about dopamine is critical too, isn't it? That the anticipation often gives a bigger spike than the actual thing. For someone with addiction, seeing the substance, preparing it, even just thinking about it can trigger that dopamine rush. So breaking the cycle of the reciprocity trap means making the cues for that unhealthy pleasure, or maybe just the relief from feeling obligated, making those cues invisible, unattractive. You cut off the anticipation, the spark, before it catches fire.
Exactly. And Maslow's hierarchy of needs gives us another powerful perspective here. He said, a greater value is usually placed upon the higher need than upon the lower by those who have been gratified in both. What this means for you in recovery is you have to be willing to sacrifice more for the higher satisfaction. You need to be able to withstand lower deprivation. Practically, this means consciously choosing your long-term well-being, your growth, your self-respect, your journey. Choosing those over the short-term comfort of giving in, the fleeting approval, the feeling of obligation that pulls you back. Your higher needs, security, belonging based on respect, self-actualization, are just fundamentally more valuable than that temporary fix of social obligation that costs you your core self.
That's such a powerful reframe, prioritizing your real, deeper needs over these superficial pressures or old debts, which leads us right into the next strategy. Communicating effectively, setting those firm, clear boundaries. Levine and Heller stress that effective communication works on the understanding that we all have very specific needs in relationships, often shaped by our attachment style. Knowing your needs, being able to say them, is huge.
Absolutely vital. Learning to communicate your attachment needs clearly without resorting to attacks or defensiveness. And look, if you're not used to being that direct, especially in old, maybe unhealthy dynamics, it can feel really awkward. They suggest it can be extremely helpful to formulate a script. Write down what you want to say. Practice it. Maybe with a friend, a therapist. Get comfortable with the words. That preparation gives you confidence, makes sure your message lands clearly, and stops those old, unhelpful ways of talking from taking over and pulling you back into the trap.
Right, and true partnerships, whether romantic, friends, family, they need healthy reciprocity, right? Levine and Heller say it so clearly. In a true partnership, both partners view it as their responsibility to ensure the other's emotional well-being. If that's not there, if someone consistently ignores your feelings, your boundaries, your recovery needs, then, well, it's just not a true partnership. Recognizing that imbalance gives you permission. Permission to step back, reevaluate, maybe redefine, or even end relationships that are actively hurting your progress.
And coming back to Skinner's idea of control while others try to control us through reciprocity, you must exert counter-control. Refusing manipulation, stating your boundaries clearly, holding firm. That is counter-control. It's powerful. It's essential. It's you asserting your agency, your autonomy. It's necessary for your freedom, your well-being. By doing that, you're showing yourself and others that you are shaping your life, not just being passively shaped by them.
Okay, last piece here, but maybe the most sustaining one. Cultivating a growth mindset and understanding the power of purpose, maybe even altruistic purpose. Carol Dweck's work on the growth mindset, it's about embracing that passion for stretching yourself and sticking to it, even or especially when it's not going well.
Mhm.
Seeing challenges like navigating tricky social obligations or resisting old pulls, not as proof you're stuck, but as chances to learn, grow, get stronger.
Yeah, that story she tells about Jimmy, the kid who seemed totally checked out, who learned about the growth mindset and just looked up, tears in his eyes, and said, "You mean I don't have to be dumb?" That sums up the power of it. It's realizing your potential isn't fixed. You can grow change. You have the power to shape it. And that absolutely applies to your ability to navigate social pressures and redefine who you are in recovery.
And this connects really nicely to Angela Duckworth's work on grit and the role of altruism. Grit, that passion and perseverance, doesn't strictly require an altruistic goal, but she found that the desire to connect with and help others is often a key part of the most meaningful, lasting goals. The goals that feel most satisfying, most worthwhile, are often connected in some way, shape, or form to the benefit of other people. Your generosity, when it's healthy, when it's sustainable. It comes not from feeling obligated or guilty, but from a genuine sense of purpose, a desire to contribute positively.
Exactly. That's the fundamental shift. Are you giving because you feel you have to, because of some perceived debt, or are you giving because it genuinely aligns with your values, with who you want to be, with the positive impact you truly want to make? And Daniel Pink's work on autonomy really shines a light here too. Think about that 3M bootlegging policy, letting employees spend 15% of their time on their own projects. That fostered self-direction, intrinsic motivation, and led to things like Post-it notes.
Right. It shows the incredible power of being self-directed, intrinsically motivated. It fuels creativity, sure, but also deep personal well-being. You're not just reacting to demands, repaying old debts. You're actively creating a life that feels authentic, meaningful, directed by you. When you align your generosity with your core values, your purpose, it stops being a potential trap and becomes a source of strength, fulfillment, and helps sustain your recovery. Hashtag tag outro.
Okay, so we have really peeled back the layers today on reciprocity. We've looked at its ancient roots deep inside us and how it can become this subtle, powerful trap. Especially when you're working hard on recovery, on your well-being. We've seen how our need for connection, for approval, our history, our attachment styles, how all of that can be leveraged, how old habits, old feelings, old obligations can just resurface under pressure.
But, and this is the crucial takeaway, you are not powerless in this.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. By understanding how influence works, by consciously choosing and building the identity you want, by designing environments that actually support you, by communicating your needs clearly, setting boundaries, and cultivating that growth mindset, that sense of genuine purpose, you absolutely can navigate these tricky social waters.
Yeah. You can be generous, you can be kind, you can be connected, deeply connected, without sacrificing your hard-won recovery, without compromising who you are now, without falling back into unhealthy obligations that just don't serve the person you're becoming. The tools, like we talked about today, they're there. You just need to pick them up, use them strategically.
So as you kind of move forward from this deep dive today, here's something that we chew on, a provocative thought. Is the generosity you express, is it a spontaneous, conscious act coming from a strong, self-directed you? Or is it maybe an unconscious echo, an echo of old obligations, subtly shaping who you're becoming in ways that maybe don't align with your truest self, your highest good?
The choice ultimately really is yours. Yours to define the terms of your own deep dive into a well-lived life.